So I designed it for them.
And they already own this land?
Yeah, it's nice to build when you've had 30 years to let the trees grow. Then you get a nice spot with trees instead of an empty field, which is what they had when they bought the property. But it's awfully hard to build with all the trees around. Many times in the course of this thing, I said to myself, gee, wouldn't it have been easier if we just clear-cut this place?
But that was your original reason not to do it.
Right, yeah.
How does it save on wood?
Well, there's not as much wood in the walls. There are posts in the walls and beams around the top edge, and of course there's frames around the windows. But it does save some wood in the walls. I can't claim that it saves an awful lot because there's still a lot of wood in this house.
Well, was that, do you think that's inherent in straw bale design, or is that just the way you designed it?
There is a way to use less wood, but it's harder to get the building code to approve it. And you also don't end up with a very straight structure because the straw holds the roof up and there's some settling where maybe your roof line is not straight anymore, it's wavy. I've helped on one of those and the roof line is wavy. So if you can deal with that and if you can get the building code officials to approve it, that's a good way.
This was your first straw bale, or was it the one?
This is the first one that I was in charge of. I helped on one over in Indiana, one that was a load-bearing straw. This is called, there's two types of straw construction, basically. There's the load-bearing, where the straw holds the roof up, and there's the that's called Nebraska style or load-bearing, which is the type that settlers used in Nebraska around the turn of the century. And the other style is post and beam, where your roof is held up by a post and beam structure.
Which this is.
Which this is, right.
So straw bale actually has been in use for a long time?
Yeah, they pretty much started doing it in about 1890, I think, very soon after they invented straw balers. People had sod houses out in Nebraska. They don't have many trees out there. And somebody came up with the idea of just building their walls out of straw. I think it worked better than the sod houses that they had out there because the sod houses collapse if they get too dry, whereas the straw is, the drier it is, the better. And some of the houses out there are still in use. I saw a church and a house from 1920 or 30 that are still in use. And I guess there's some older than that that are still in use.
Do you have pictures of those?
I do, yeah.
All of a sudden I'm thinking of Three Little Pigs.
Yeah.
Is that what they were talking about when they said a house made of straw? Or?
Everybody thinks of that, but they're actually quite solid, especially with the plaster and the stucco on the outside. They have to, in order to get past code, they had to do tests on them. So they built a straw wall with stucco and plaster and put a bunch of weights trying to pull it over to simulate a 100-mile-an-hour wind, and it passed that. So this house has two separate structures, a post and beam structure, which is certified to be able to withstand a 100-mile-an-hour wind, plus straw, and plaster, which is certified to be able to withstand that. And between the two of them, I figure it can probably withstand a lot more. That and the other thing people often ask about is fire. I think it was the Canadian Mortgage Company or something, or an arm of the Canadian government did tests that showed that this type of construction is more resistant to fire than a standard stud wall with insulation in it. The reason being that there's not very much air in a straw wall. So even if this one was to be exposed to fire, it doesn't burn very well. It's even bare straw a bale doesn't burn very well. It singes around the edges and it will catch any wood that's next to it on fire. The wood will burn, and then you'll be left with a bunch of straw bales and nothing else. So you do have to be careful in construction when you're at the stage when you have a lot of loose straw available for in case a fire should start. And I was very worried about that while I was building this. But once I got the stucco and the plaster on, fire is not a worry at all.
So the straw bales are just covered with stucco?
Essentially.
You just plastered stucco on the outside of the...
Yeah,
on the inside of the wall?
Both, actually.
Inside and outside?
In this house, we've put something called stucco wire, which is basically just a heavy chicken wire, on both the inside and the outside. And plus, for the curves, we did a finer mesh, just to make it easy to follow that curve with the stucco and the plaster. But essentially, it's just a wall of straw with stucco on the outside and plaster on the inside.
Did you basically learn that while you were doing it?
Yeah. You can see some parts of the house are rougher than others.
Well, it's probably only noticeable to you, though.
Well, yeah. The first plastering we did was in the den, so to speak. And my cohort and my assistant in this project suggested we should go back and do that room over again. But I insisted that it was a den, so it should be rough. So.
It was artistically
right.
Correct.
The stucco is 3 coats. It's 3 coats of stucco on the outside, and I think it's just 2 coats of plaster on the inside. That's right. So by the time we got through with a total of 5 coats, we felt like we were pretty proficient.
Okay, and what is the insulation impact of having the straw walls?
If you're familiar with R values, the books I've read say that a straw wall with stucco and plaster is about R40 to R45. Now, to my recollection, a standard 2x4 wall with insulation is somewhere between 15 and 20. So it's at least double and perhaps triple what a standard stud wall is.
And is there any way to, I mean, how do they figure an R value, do you know?
I'm sure they have some fancy scientific room where they have cold on one side and heat on the other side, and they time it and measure it.
And come up with an R value.
Yeah, right.
So in terms of comparing how much heat you'd need if this were just a normal fiberglass insulated R20 wall versus an all R40, it's not, I mean, you can't really say it's 2 to 1, can you? Or do you have any sense of how different it would be?
I would think it would be something like that.
Something like 2 to 1?
I would think so. Although, on the other hand, the ceiling is where most heat leaves a house, and this ceiling is done to code here, so any other house built at this time period would have the same amount of insulation as this one does. It's hard to judge what the energy usage would be under other circumstances. I can say that my parents have lived here for 2 winters, and they've kept the house pleasantly warm, unlike the house they used to live in. I'm sure their friends like visiting them more now because it's warm in here. And their bill for the coldest month of the winter was under $40, and of that, about $8 was their hot water usage because they have a gas water heater. So their coldest month of the year, their heating bill itself was about $32 or less.
What kind of heat do they have?
It's a radiant floor, hot water, let's see, there's a term for it. It's a radiant hot water floor, I guess you'd say.
So it's like a radiator, except the pipes are in the floor instead of sitting in the middle of the room.
Right. And that actually is another energy energy conservation method, because in, how do you say this? The reason it conserves energy is that when you have warm surfaces around you, the air temperature can be cooler and you can still be comfortable. So that also is an issue with the walls, because the walls are going to be warmer. You can have the air temperature cooler and still feel comfortable.
And the north or the south side of the house has windows.
Right.
More than 50% of the walls window.
We concentrated our windows in the south, of course. We have windows on the north too, but didn't put as many there.
So you are getting a significant amount of heat.
Yeah.
From the windows.
Definitely on a sunny day, this room will heat up more, but I don't believe uncomfortably so. The only times I've been uncomfortable in this house were in the fall and spring. My folks turn off the furnace and use their wood stove, but that doesn't affect their heating bills during the midwinter, because they don't use the stove during midwinter. They only use it in the fall and the spring. And the first year, my dad could not learn to build a small enough fire. I'd come in here and I'd be saying, "Oh, it's hot in here. Can we open a window?" But, you know, being energy conservation people, they would not open that window. Now he's learned to build a very small fire.
So in the summer, when it's hot, what impact does it have?
It serves as a natural air conditioner.
The straw bale does?
Yeah, because it also dampens sound. My folks don't have the pleasure of having a teenager across the street with a boombox car, but if they did, their house would be considerably quieter than some houses. In the summer, we've got a lot of trees around, so of course we've got some good shade. But because of the R value, they can just keep the house closed up tight during the day and then open it up at night to let fresh, cool air come in. And plus they've got ceiling fans and a 9-foot ceiling, which are other ways to keep from having to use air conditioning. The hot air will rise up to that 9-foot ceiling, and if they need a breeze, they can run the fan. They haven't used their fans very much, and during the hottest part of last summer, it got up to the high 70s in the house, but it was still comfortable.
And do they have the windows open and getting a cross breeze at all? Or?
I'm sure they do, yeah. They open a lot of windows in the nighttime.
What about odor? Does it create any odor?
No.
Why not?
Well, you'd have to have cracks in it to get an odor. Plus, you'd probably have to have a moisture problem if you were going to get any sort of moldy smell out of it or something. The bales would have to be wet. They can last pretty much forever as long as they stay dry.
What about fiberglass? Does that have a life to it?
Not that I know of.
Okay, so either way you have a permanent insulation.
Yeah, right. Fiberglass would suffer if you got it wet too, I guess.
Are there any other, you mentioned fire, but in terms of comparing it to fiberglass, which I guess around here is primarily what people use.
Yeah.
I mean, one thing I noticed was when I've installed fiberglass, you know, you get it in your hands.
It's
and
itchy.
Yeah, it can be dangerous to install.
Right. Yeah, I get itchy when I work with fiberglass. And it's probably not good for your lungs either. Now, some people have trouble with straw dust.
Allergic?
Yeah, my wife, when she's helped me, wears a dust mask because it makes her sneeze and causes asthma.
Does it now that the house is done?
No, there's really no effect. You wouldn't know there was straw in here if we didn't put the little window in that proves there's straw in there.
Uh-huh. Okay. And what about cost? What are the cost issues?
Well, there's less materials cost to build with straw. The straw is very cheap. There's more labor involved. So if you're doing the labor yourself, you can still save money if you're not counting how much your labor is worth. if you're paying somebody else, the labor costs pretty much counter the materials costs, and it ends up a wash. But you end up with much better insulation, so you save money down the road.
How much, can I ask how much the house cost?
Yeah. This house cost essentially $100 a square foot, including my labor and my helper's labor and all the subcontracting of plumbing and roofing.
So if I had asked you, I own this land, build me this house, it would have cost me about $100 a square foot?
Yeah.
And how does that compare to, is that about the same as any house?
Yeah. Yeah, you can build cheaper than that, and this house could have been built cheaper than that, but we put a copper roof on it, and we did custom cabinets and a fancy floor and radiant heating. A lot of expenses that we could have avoided. So I feel, combined with my experience of building another straw house, that I could easily build one for $75 a square foot if I didn't make it quite so fancy. And I think that compares quite favorably with standard construction.
Now, as far as electricity is concerned, you have the tubular lights.
Yeah, we're saving on lighting costs by having skylights that are essentially like a shiny stovepipe, where the sun comes in at the top and it bounces around down this shiny tube and it comes out at the bottom. And one of the advantages of that over a standard skylight is it doesn't lose as much heat in the winter or gain as much in the summer, because the surface area involved is quite small compared to the amount of light you get out.
It's also not coming directly down from the sun. I mean,
Yeah.
the sun, unless
Right.
the sun's directly over it, which it never is, I guess.
Right, yeah. And it's got a buffer in there of, depending on the length of the length of the tube going through the attic, it's got a buffer of air that's neither at room temperature nor at outside temperature, that's somewhere in between.
And do you have any idea how many watts of electric light that would be?
No, I can't say. It always depends. On a cloudy day, it's one thing. On a sunny day, it's another.
You know, it looks fairly bright. And of course at night you can't compare because it's not on at night.
You do get some moonlight through them.
Do you really?
Yeah.
So on a full moon, it's noticeably brighter in here.
Yeah. I haven't spent a lot of nighttime in the dark in here, but I've put in a lot of these for other people in existing houses. And one of the big things is people take a long time to learn that they don't have to, they want to turn out the light and they can't. I mean, they think they should turn out the light and they can't. But they get used to that.
Well, how economical is it to put in a retrofit in the house?
With the skylights, the tubular skylights. I believe they're more expensive than a standard skylight. I haven't really followed the price of standard skylights. Again, this is material cost. Material cost is, for one of these, is $300 or $400, but the installation is very easy. So they're much easier to put in than a regular skylight. In terms of this, you just, in an afternoon, you can cut a couple round holes and slap it in, whereas with a standard skylight, you've got to box in a square thing with drywall and then mud it and trim it out with wood.
So how much would it cost to put one in my house for the second floor? It's going through an attic.
Around,
so you have a tube.
Yeah, around $400.
With labor.
Yeah.
With labor,
With labor.
$400.
Yeah.
Okay, so if it's a 100-watt bulb that you have in there that you're not turning on.
How long would it take you to save that money?
Do you have any idea?
I haven't figured that out, and I have a feeling that that it would be a long time. I think where you have to justify it is in pleasure. In pleasure in the fact that you would either be working in the dark, either you wouldn't turn on the light and you'd be in the dark, or you'd be turning on the light and you wouldn't like to. So you'd enjoy it more with one of these.
Now, you have a translucent white cover on that.
Yeah.
That's dome shaped. Is the dome spreading the light out in the room?
Yeah, it's a diffuser. When I put these things in, if it's a sunny day and I'm working around the ceiling there, getting ready to put that diffuser up, it is really blinding. On a sunny day, it's just like looking into the sun. So you can get them with a clear dome on the bottom, but they'd be really hard to look at.
Tell me about the on-demand hot water, how that works.
Okay. Most hot water heaters, almost all hot water heaters in this country have a tank. And if you've got a lot of people in your house, you have a 40 or 60, 80 gallon tank that's got hot water in it at all times. Kept at maximum temperature of 130 degrees or something, I'm not sure. During the winter, I suppose that's not so bad because it loses a little heat and it helps heat the house. During the summer, you've got this tank of 40 gallons of hot water that's radiating heat into your house when you don't want heat. So you're paying and using gas for a lot of heat and you don't want heat, so then you're using your air conditioner to counteract the heat that you're putting into it. So what we have here is a heater that only heats water as you use it. So if you turn on a faucet, if you turn the hot water faucet on, it sends a message to this burner to turn on, and as the water goes through coils, they're heated by the burner and you end up with hot water. You still have to pick the right one for the application. If you think you might have one person wanting to take a shower in one bathroom while somebody else is running the dishwasher in the kitchen, you might need to get a unit that can supply two different outlets at the same time with hot water. And I think that's what this is. You can get them to supply 3 or more.
So, but you only have one unit.
You do, yeah, we just have one unit.
So when you turn on the hot water in the kitchen, it's coming from that place near the bathroom.
Right. And we did try to design the house. One of my dad's top priorities was to try to clump all the plumbing at one spot so he wouldn't have to wait for what seems like minute after minute, as he did in his old house, for the hot water to get from the basement to the second floor. This way it only has about 15 feet maybe to go, and so it's pretty quick.
You now live in his old house, is
Yeah.
that correct?
And it does take a long time to get hot water to the upstairs bathroom.
And it's the same kind of hot water that most people have in
Yeah.
their houses.
Right.
It seemed like a very small unit. Is it just like a maze of pipes in there that are?
I haven't opened it up, but it's got to have, it's got to be sort of like a radiator, a car radiator, or else a still, something like with coils going back and forth.
And it's just like surrounded by natural gas flame?
Yeah.
So you could leave the water on all day and it would still be hot.
Right, you don't run out of hot water unless you run out of gas.
Oh, that's an advantage too.
Right, yeah. You don't have to worry about the person before you taking too long a shower.
Well, that's a huge advantage too.
And you can place them separately. You could place one, if you have widely separated bathrooms or kitchens, you could put one at each location.
And how costly are they?
I'm speaking off the top of my head, but I think that's probably cost twice as much as a regular water heater. This is an imported one from France, though, and it's possible as they become more accepted that they'll be produced more locally.
So it's like $400 or more?
I think it was maybe $500.
Okay, and installation?
It was pretty straightforward, but that was part of our
Plan.
plumbing contractor did that. So.
Well, in terms of adding one to an existing house, is that awkward?
Well, that depends on, you can also get them as an electric model or gas. If you do a gas add-on at a new location, you'll have to deal with gas lines and venting the flue. If you put one right where the old one was, you should have that all taken care of, and it would be pretty straightforward. this is a cloudy day that you're seeing now, and they're fairly subdued. On a sunny day, it really lights the place up a lot. The term I was looking for earlier was it's a quality of life issue. Having daylight, they say, is good for your psyche. It makes you feel better, so it's probably a good thing.
What about the windows?
One of the things I like the most about straw bale walls is because of the depth. You get a nice window seat, and you can do the curved walls around the edges of the window. It gives a nice sort of homey feel to it to have a deep window. We've got 4 big windows in this room, yeah. And we picked, most of these window sizes we picked to be the width of 1 bale or the width of 2 bales, just because it made it easier to design around sort of the module of a bale of hay, a bale of straw. You could build out of hay, but straw is better because it doesn't have much food value in it. If I was building with hay, I'd have to worry about what would happen if the mice got in it. They'd have something to eat. Since I'm building in straw, there's not much in there that they could really survive on anyway, and they'd have to come out to eat.
You want to show us the little window there?
Oh yeah, definitely. It's traditional in straw bale construction to always put in what they call a truce window. This is so that you can show people that you are telling the truth. There is straw in that wall. This is the only place you can see it. As you can see, it's got a mesh in it that looks like chicken wire, which is used to help hold the plaster on. And it's also got a piece of glass across the top of it, because in a climate in which you have to heat in the winter, during the winter, air can force its way into the walls and carry moisture with it. Since our top priority is to keep the straw dry, we put a vapor barrier paint over the plaster to keep water vapor from being forced into the wall. And so we wanted to maintain that vapor barrier at our truth window, so we put a piece of glass over it. We've got a vestibule here. I guess that's an energy saving feature, so that you can close the doors off and not have cold air coming into the house when you step out the front door.
Excuse us.
Let's see. I'm not thinking of anything in particular I have to tell you about this.
You have another light, though.
Another tubular skylight. This is what I call the den, the pool table room. It's got a rougher plaster look to it. You can see it at the windows if you care. We got better at doing our curves after that.
And we can see the hot water.
I don't know if you want to mention the 9-foot ceilings at any time, but
why 9 foot?
Well, 10 foot just felt too tall to me. 9 feet gives you somewhere it makes it cooler in the summer to have a 9-foot ceiling. It's possible. I don't know if I can take the cover off this or not so that we can see the burners. Maybe not. I'm not sure when I've ever done it, so. I could turn on a faucet and you could see.
All right.
See. I don't know if that'll come over in your video or not.
What, you can see the flame through it?
Well, you probably didn't see very much there. But
Maybe if we turn the light off and try it again.
Yeah, okay.
So it automatically goes off also?
Yeah.
Okay, do it again.
The water's hot.
So it's literally as fast as if there was a tank there of hot water.
Right, yeah. Yeah, the only delay is the same delay that you get with any water heater. while you're waiting for the pipe, while you're waiting for the hot water to get from the source to your faucet.
I notice a fan goes on when you turn it off. Is that to cool the pipes, or?
I don't think that's a fan.
Or what is it?
I think what you're hearing is the motor on the furnace.
Oh, all right.
The boiler is heating water and piping it through the floor to warm up the floor, and then the floor warms up the air of the house.
So this is the central heating.
Yeah,
too.
that's the furnace there.
So those waters are carrying hot water to into the floor.
With those pipes there going down, those three gray plastic pipes are going down into the floor. These are all this pipe is for the hot water.
Okay.
Let's see, well, there's a screen porch which helps alleviate the need for air conditioning, I think. That might be a stretch, but this is a mess. I don't know if... My dad decided that the more ventilation we had in the attic, the better. So we put in as much venting of our attic space as we could. So we had a little spot here, and he said, well, why cover that up with a solid wall when we could vent it? He's actually had some bats nesting in one of the other vents, and he's upset about that because that means there's less airflow and that the attic's not getting as much cool air into it as it should. I've been telling him, we want the bats there, but...
Want to just walk around the outside?
Uh-huh.
And what's the advantage of the copper roof?
Well, it's zero maintenance.
Let's go back to where you can see it. And
okay. I think that'll be over on this side. Yeah, you can see the sun pipes there. And you can also see the vent for the furnace is that one that has the funny little one coming up the middle. That is designed so that the furnace gases, as they go out, are preheating the air that the furnace is using on its way in. So that helps reduce the amount of heating that the furnace has to do by saving some of the heat that's leaving. The reason we used a copper roof is that it's zero maintenance, at least we think it is, and also that it's recyclable. With an asphalt shingle roof, every 20 years or 30 years you have to tear it off and throw it in the dump and start over. So we felt this was a better ecological solution.
So you just recycle the copper?
Yeah, although I'm planning on this house lasting hundreds of years, and the copper should still be there. Somebody, hundreds of years from now, will recycle this copper.
So the house itself is, you'd have to maybe re-stucco it every once in a while?
Yeah, touch it up maybe. If it's got some cracks, you'd have to fill the cracks.
There's no painting?
There's no paint. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a colored stucco. So there's no painting of that. The other exterior aspect is vinyl around the windows and vinyl soffits. And those should last for a long time without any attention.
If you paint it, if you have to patch it, can you match the color?
Well, I saved some. We've got, a partial bag of this color of stucco. And so you can patch it. And if you had to make something up, you could try to get close. We haven't worried too much about that. You can see some patches there where we didn't like our final coat, and we stuck a little bit on it. But it has a nice rustic look to it. Because we've got such a varied surface in terms of bumps and we've got swirls and we've got curves, and we feel, if you've got a few different colors in there, that's all right too.
So did you cut down any trees to build the house?
We cut down this tree after the house was built because tulip trees seem to be prone to losing their top. And we did cut down another tulip tree.
For safety, so it wouldn't fall on the house?
Yeah, because we didn't want it to hurt that nice copper roof.
For the last hundreds of years.
But yeah, we did cut down another tulip tree, but my folks planted so many tulip trees here 30 years ago that we felt we could afford a few.